Welcome back to the reading of Carl Rogers on Becoming a Person. Last time we had ended on the bottom of page 174. Today we're going to be starting on page 175, Toward Trust of Self, and see how far we go. Toward trust of self. Still another way of describing this pattern, which I see in each client, is to say that increasingly he trusts and values the process which is himself. Watching my clients, I have come to a much better understanding of creative people. Greco, for example, must have realized as he looked at some of his early work that, quote, good artists do not paint like that. But somehow he trusted his own experiencing of life, the process of himself, sufficiently that he could go on expressing his own unique perceptions. It was as though he could say, good artists do not paint like this, but I paint like this. Or move to another field, Ernest Hemingway was surely aware that good writers, quote, do not write like this, end quote, but fortunately he moved toward being Hemingway, being himself, rather than toward someone else's conception of a good writer. Einstein seems to have been unusually oblivious to the fact that good physicists did not think kind of his thoughts, rather than drawing back because of his inadequate academic preparation in physics. He simply moved toward being Einstein, toward thinking his own thoughts, toward being as truly and deeply himself as he could. This is not a phenomenon which occurs only in the artist or the genius. Time and again in my clients, I have seen simple people become significant and creative in their own spheres, as they have developed more trust of the process going on within themselves and have dared to feel their own feelings, live by values which they discover within, and express themselves in their own unique ways. The general direction. Let me see if I can state more concisely what is involved in the pattern of movement which I see in clients, the elements of which I've been trying to describe. It seems to mean that the individual moves toward being, knowingly and acceptingly, the process which he inwardly and actually is. He moves away from being what he is not, from being a facade. He is not trying to be more than he is, with the attendant feelings of insecurity or bombastic defensiveness. He is not trying to be less than he is, with the attendant feelings of guilt or self-depreciation. He is increasingly listening to the deepest recesses of his physiological and emotional being, and finds himself increasingly willing to be, with greater accuracy and depth, that self which he most truly is. One client, as he begins to sense the direction he is taking, asks himself in one interview, "You mean if I'd really be what I felt like being, that would be all right?" His own further experience and that of many another client tends toward an affirmative answer. To be what he truly is, this is the path of life which he appears to value most highly, when he is free to move in any direction. It is not simply an intellectual value choice, but seems to be the best description of the groping, tentative, uncertain behaviors by which he moves exploringly toward what he wants to be. Some misapprehensions. To many people, the path of life I have been endeavoring to describe seems like a most unsatisfactory path indeed. To the degree that this involves a real difference in values, I simply respect it as a difference. But I have found that sometimes such an attitude is due to a certain misapprehension. Insofar as I can, I would like to clear that away. Does it imply fixity? To some, it appears that to be what one is to remain static. They see such a purpose or value as synonymous with being fixed or unchanging. Nothing could be further from the truth. To be what one is to enter fully into being a process. Change is facilitated, probably maximized, when one is willing to be what he truly is. Indeed, it is the person who is denying his feelings and his reaction who is the person who tends to come for therapy. He has often for years been trying to change, but finds himself fixed in these behaviors which he dislikes. It is only as he can become more of himself, can be more of what he has denied in himself, that there is any prospect of change. Does it imply being evil? An even more common reaction to the path of life I have been describing is that to be what one truly is would mean to be bad, evil, uncontrolled, destructive. It would mean to unleash some kind of monster on the world. This is a view which is very well known to me since I met it in almost every client. If I quote, if I dare to let the feelings flow which are dammed up within me, if by some chance I should live in those feelings, then this would be a complete catastrophe, end quote. This is the attitude spoken or unspoken of nearly every client as he moves into the experiencing of the unknown aspects of himself. But the whole course of his experience in therapy contradicts these fears. He finds that gradually he can be his anger when his anger is a real reaction, but that such an accepted or transparent anger is not destructive. He finds that he can be his fear, but that knowingly to be his fear does not dissolve him. He finds that he can be self-pitying, and it is not bad. He can feel and he can feel and be his sexual feelings or his lazy feelings or his hostile feelings, and the roof of the world does not fall in. The reason seems to be that the more he is able to permit these feelings to flow and to be in him, the more they take their appropriate place in total harmony of his feelings. He discovers that his other feelings, with which these mingle and find a balance, he feels loving and tender and considerate and cooperative, as well as hostile or lustful or angry. He feels interest and zest and curiosity, as well as laziness or apathy. He feels courageous and venturesome, as well as fearful. His feelings, when he lives closely and acceptingly with their complexity, operate in a constructive harmony rather than sweeping him into some uncontrollably evil path. Sometimes people express this concern by saying, if an individual were to be what he truly is, he would be releasing the beast in himself. I feel somewhat amused by this because I think we might take a closer look at the beasts. The lion is often a symbol of raving beast, but what about him? Unless he has been very much warped by contact with humans, he has a number of qualities I have been describing. To be sure, he kills when he is hungry, but he does not go on wild rampages of killing, nor does he overfeed himself. He keeps his handsome figure better than some of us. He is helpless and dependent in his puppyhood, but he moves from that to independence. He does not cling to dependence. He is selfish and self-centered in infancy, but in adulthood, he shows a reasonable degree of cooperativeness and feeds, cares for, and protects his young. He satisfies his sexual desires, but this does not mean that he goes on wild and lustful orgies. His various tendencies and urges have a harmony within him. He is, in some basic sense, a constructive and trustworthy member of the species Philos Leo. And what I am trying to suggest is that when one is truly and deeply a unique member of the human species, this is not something which should excite horror. It means instead that one lives fully and openly the complex processes of being one of the most wildly sensitive, responsive, and creative creatures on this planet. Fully to be one's own uniqueness as a human being is not, in my experience, a process which would be labeled bad. More appropriate words might be that it is a positive or constructive or realistic or a trustworthy process. An end of reading for today. We have read to 178, so next time we will start with social implications and continue on to at least to the end of this chapter, which will be the end of chapter 8. So thank you all, and I look forward to reading with you next time.